A Detroit man smiling and waving to cameras before being sentenced to decades behind bars for the 2023 killing of Detroit neurosurgeon Dr. Devon Hoover. A judge sentenced Desmond Burks to 40 to 60 years in prison for Hoover's murder, along with 10 to 15 years to be served at the same time for a separate manslaughter case. 4 of Hoover's sisters and a brother-in-law spoke directly to Burks, telling him they forgive him, and they were met with smirks and eye rolls even as they gave him a Bible. 7 News Detroit reporter Tiara Braddock in the courtroom lifting their voices tonight.
There was a lot of emotions inside the courtroom as Desmond Burks was sentenced on Friday.
Let me ask you something. If you didn't show up to work, missed a trip to see your dying mother, and nobody could reach you, how long do you think it would take before someone came looking for you? A day, maybe 2. For Dr. Devon Hoover, it took less than 24 hours. And what they found when they finally got to him, I still can't wrap my head around it. On April 22, 2023, police in Detroit got a complaint about a white Range Rover blocking someone's driveway on the far west side of the city. Pretty routine call, right? But when officers got closer, they noticed something that stopped them cold. There was blood inside that car. Not a small amount, enough to make them run the plates. The vehicle came back registered to a man named Dr. Devon Hoover, who lived about 5 miles away. Officers drove to his home that same evening, found the gate wide open, knocked, and got nothing. No answer. No movement. Just silence. They left. The next morning, April 23rd, Hoover's family called police for a welfare check. He had missed a trip to Indiana to visit his mother, who was dying. That wasn't like him. Devon wasn't the type to just disappear. So officers went back to the house, and this time they forced their way in. What they found inside that home is something that his family, his colleagues, and honestly anyone who has followed this case cannot easily forget. Dr. Devon Hoover was found face down in the attic crawl space of his own home. He was wearing only his socks, and he had been wrapped in a blood-soaked carpet. An autopsy confirmed he had been shot twice in the back of the head. Now, before we go any further, if you are new here, welcome to Midnight Crime. If this is the kind of content that keeps you up at night the same way it keeps me up, please like this video, subscribe, and make sure you click that bell icon so you never miss an episode. We cover real cases, real victims, and real justice, or the lack of it. Now let's get back to Devon, because this man deserves for his story to be told fully and told right. Dr. Devon Hoover was 53 years old. He was a neurosurgeon, and not just any neurosurgeon. He was on staff at Ascension Hospital in Detroit, one of the most respected medical institutions in Michigan. This was a man who spent his entire career opening up people's skulls and saving their lives. He was educated, disciplined, and by all accounts deeply dedicated to his work. His family described him as a devoted brother and son. He was the kind of person who, even while carrying the weight of a demanding surgical career, still made time to show up for the people he loved. That is who Devon Hoover was.
A Detroit man smiling and waving to cameras before being sentenced to decades behind bars for the 2023 killing of Detroit neurosurgeon Dr. Devon Hoover. A judge sentenced Desmond Burks to 40 to 60 years in prison for Hoover's murder, along with 10 to 15 years to be served at the same time for a separate manslaughter case. 4 of Hoover's sisters and a brother-in-law spoke directly to Burks, telling him they forgive him, and they were met with smirks and eye rolls even as they gave him a Bible. 7 News Detroit reporter Tiara Braddock in the courtroom lifting their voices tonight.
There was a lot of emotions inside the courtroom as Desmond Burks was sentenced on Friday. For the family of Dr. Devon Hoover, this day marked a long-awaited step towards justice.
Devon's death has affected every member of our large family.
Dr. Devon Hoover's sisters filled a Wayne County courtroom on Friday to face their brother's killer.
He loved his family, and we knew it. Now there is a Devon-sized hole in the middle of our family.
Hoover, who was a prominent neurosurgeon in Detroit, was shot and killed inside his Boston Edison home back in 2023.
One man, Desmond Burks, is responsible for our grief, our loss, and all that will never be.
Last month, 35-year-old Desmond Burks pleaded guilty to second-degree murder in the killing of Hoover. Prosecutors say Burks and Hoover had an intimate relationship, as revealed in thousands of text messages. It was also revealed that Burks sometimes charged Hoover for sex. During his sentencing, Burks was seen smiling and even rolling his eyes as Hoover's sister spoke. He had this to say when it was his turn to address the court.
About the doctor stuff, just because I took the plea, don't mean I did it.
Burks was also sentenced to 10 to 15 years for killing another man in an unrelated case of road rage. It happened in 2024 while he was still under investigation in Dr. Hoover's murder. Prosecutors say Burks punched Dearborn resident Reda Saleh, who later died from his injuries. Saleh's stepdaughter also spoke out in court.
Reda was one of the gentlest, most genuine men you could ever meet. He would never hurt anyone.
And after relatives of the victim said their piece, Judge Paul Cusick had this to say.
Those were some of the most profound, forgiving statements that this court has ever heard. And it's a far cry from the dichotomy that we've seen on the other side, quite frankly, and the smirks and the rolling of the eyes and making this a circus. All I have to say is, quite frankly, you are a murderer, sir. You are a killer.
At the Wayne County Criminal Justice Center, Tiara Braddock, 7 News, Detroit.
Tiara, thank you.
Now here is where things start to get complicated. Because Devon Hoover was not just a brilliant surgeon. He was also a man with a private life. And that private life is exactly where investigators would eventually find their answers. At some point before his death, Devon had connected with a man named Desmond Burks. Desmond was 35 years old, unemployed, and by multiple accounts, lived off the generosity of others. We are talking about a man who had no job, no credit card, and no stable source of income. People who knew him said he would get money, clothes, food, and phones from the people he got close to. That was his pattern. And Devon Hoover became one of those people. Now I want you to really think about this for a second. Here you have a 53-year-old neurosurgeon, a man who worked incredibly hard to build a life, a career, a reputation. And on the other side, you have someone who saw that and made a calculated decision to get close to him. According to prosecutors, the two had developed what they described as an intimate relationship. Devon's phone contained roughly 4,000 text messages exchanged between the two of them. 4,000. That is not a casual connection. That is someone who was very much present in Devon's day-to-day life. But here is what the messages also revealed. Desmond had developed feelings for Devon. At some point, he asked Devon if he could move in with him. Devon said no. And according to investigators, that rejection may have been the beginning of the end. Prosecutors also revealed something that I think speaks to the kind of dynamic that was playing out between these two men. Desmond would sometimes charge Devon for sexual services. So on one hand, you have someone asking to move in, wanting something more, and on the other hand, still treating the relationship like a transaction. That contradiction alone tells you a lot about the kind of emotional tension that was building under the surface. And then Devon apparently made another decision that investigators believe may have pushed things even further. He suggested bringing another man into the picture. Someone he had met at Palmer Park. Prosecutors argued that this may have triggered something in Desmond. Jealousy. Rage. A feeling of being replaced or disrespected. Now I am not saying any of that justifies what happened. Nothing justifies what happened. But when you are trying to understand how a respected surgeon ends up wrapped in a blood-soaked carpet in his own attic, you have to follow the emotions. You have to follow the tension, because that is almost always where you find the truth. On April 22, 2023, cell phone data placed Devon's phone near Desmond Burks' home. It also placed it at a mall in Dearborn. What it never did was return to Devon's house. Devon never made it home that night. So now investigators have a missing doctor, a blood-soaked Range Rover abandoned miles from his home, and a cell phone that stopped moving in the direction of his house. They had enough to start pulling on threads. And when they did, what unraveled was one of the most detailed and far-reaching investigations Detroit had seen in years. Surveillance footage became a major piece of this puzzle. Cameras caught Desmond Burks driving Devon's white Range Rover in the days following the murder. And here is the detail that really got me. He was seen on footage parking the car near where it was eventually found, then walking away from it carrying a backpack. And he was limping. Investigators already knew why. Desmond had previously been shot in the hip, which left him with a noticeable limp. That limp essentially became his signature on camera. There was no denying it was him. But Desmond did not just take the car. After Devon's death, someone began making fraudulent transactions using Devon's bank accounts. Over $30,000 was drained. His Range Rover was taken. 2 watches were stolen, together valued at around $13,500. One of those watches, a Cartier, was later found during a search of properties linked to Desmond. The other, a watch worth $7,500 that Devon had purchased the day before he was killed, was also recovered. Think about that. Devon bought a watch the day before someone took his life. He had no idea that would be one of the last things he ever did. Now around this same time, people in Desmond's circle started noticing a change in him. He went from a man with no income, no card, and no stability, to suddenly looking polished and flush with cash. He started calling himself Big Money Des. He was spotted wearing Cartier eyewear. He had expensive watches on his wrist. He was spending freely. And the people closest to him knew that none of that added up. Because just weeks before, he had been the same man borrowing money and relying on others to cover his basic needs. Several of his former partners testified about this pattern. One after another, they described how Desmond would get close to people, charm them, and then drain them. Money, phones, clothes, meals, whatever he could get. And not one of them could explain where his sudden wealth came from after April 2023. Investigators were building their case carefully. This was not a rush to arrest. The investigation stretched across 5 states: Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Texas, and California. It crossed international lines, involving coordination in England and France. At least 71 officers at local, state, and federal levels worked on it. The investigators' report alone came in at 181 pages. Over 300 pieces of evidence were collected. More than 134 search warrants were executed. This was not a small operation. Somebody wanted justice for Devon Hoover. And they were going to make absolutely sure they got it right.
It is sentencing day for the man who pleaded guilty to killing Detroit neurosurgeon Devon Hoover. A judge sentencing Desmond Burks to 35 to 60 years behind bars. Fox 2's Scott Wolchuk joins us live in studio. And Scott, Burks was actually smiling in court.
Yeah, it was the kind of stuff that makes your skin crawl, Roop. You know, this guy was smiling for the cameras. He really did not appear to have too much empathy for Hoover's sisters, who were giving very heartfelt impact statements. So Hoover was murdered inside of his home in Detroit's Boston Edison neighborhood back on April 23rd of 2023. Remember, this guy's a neurosurgeon, and it's a day that Hoover's family will not forget. This investigation lasted a very long time before Burks was finally arrested and charged. Investigators allege that Burks and Hoover had a sexual relationship prior to the brutal murder. Take a listen to Dr. Hoover's family.
We couldn't sleep. We sat on the couch in silence, just praying for a miracle. And then the call came. He was gone, murdered. My only brother, my childhood companion, the one I had played with every day. The shock and horror of Devon's death turned everything upside down. 4 days after the awful realization of his murder, our mother passed away.
He was strong, capable, driven, and exceptionally intelligent. He loved his family, and we knew it. Now there is a Devon-sized hole in the middle of our family, and our hearts are forever changed by grief.
I would ask if at some point you could say to our family and the Saleh family that you understand how great our loss is. That would be really meaningful to us.
Look right there. So right after that passionate thing, he's shaking his head, and right about here, he's about to start even grinning, smiling right after that, you know. So now Burks also pled guilty to the manslaughter of another man, Reda, Saleh, who was killed in a case of road rage. Burks did take the stand to address the court today. Take a listen to that.
I like to say I'm not a murderer, I'm not a killer. I'm a regular person like everybody in this room. I'm not gay as what the prosecutor want me to be. Not a gang member. I love sports. I didn't intentionally meant to kill the guy about the road rage. It was a slap, not an assault. Sorry about what happened, but can't bring it back. About the doctor stuff, just because I took the plea, don't mean I did it. I'm tired of them keep saying that I'm some gay killer or a gay person and a gang member in the same breath.
Yeah, 35 to 60 years in prison for Burks. Roop, back to you. What do you think?
Thinking about that family, that's quite a terrible tragedy for that sister and the entire family to have to withstand the pain. Scott Wolchuk for us live tonight. Thank you.
Now here is something that I think a lot of people glossed over when this case was being covered. While investigators were still building their case against Desmond Burks for Devon's murder, Desmond went out and did something that removed any remaining doubt about the kind of person they were dealing with. In April 2024, Almost exactly 1 year after Devon was killed, Desmond got into a road rage incident. A 67-year-old man named Reda Saleh from Dearborn was involved. Desmond punched him and left him lying in the street. Reda Saleh died a month later from his injuries. Just like that, a second family was destroyed. A second life was taken. And Desmond Burks was now connected to 2 deaths. He was finally formally charged in August 2024, more than 15 months after Devon's murder. And when his trial began on January 20, 2026, the public was ready. Jury selection started, and the courtroom was loaded with evidence. 181 pages of investigation. Surveillance footage. Bank records. Witness testimonies. Text messages. Recovered watches. A witness who admitted to helping Desmond dispose of evidence, including Devon's surgical glasses, his clothes, and a 9mm gun. And then on January 21st, just 2 days into jury selection, Desmond Burks pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. His own attorney described it as a surprise. Nobody saw it coming. In exchange for the plea, the first-degree murder charge was dropped. But make no mistake, a guilty plea was entered. Under oath. The sentencing happened on February 20, 2026. And I need you to picture this courtroom, because the energy in that room was something else entirely. Desmond walked in smiling. He was making comments to his attorney. He waved at cameras. He threw up peace signs. And as Devon's sisters stood at that podium and poured their hearts out about losing their only brother, about planning 2 funerals in 1 week because their mother died just 4 days after learning Devon had been murdered, Desmond Burks sat there and rolled his eyes. 5 of Devon's family members spoke. And every single one of them said they forgave him. They even brought a Bible to give to him in that courtroom. That kind of grace in the middle of that much pain is something I personally find extraordinary. Judge Paul Cusick looked Desmond directly in the eyes and said, "You are a murderer, sir. You are a killer. You pled under oath to that, and that is your sentence." Desmond was handed 35 to 60 years for Devon's murder and 10 to 15 years for Reda Saleh's death. As he was being let out, he mocked the judge's words back at him. 35 years minimum before he sees the outside world again. Now I want to leave you with this. DevonHoover spent his entire career going into operating rooms and saving people's lives. He dedicated years of study, sacrifice, and discipline to become the kind of doctor that other people trusted with their most vulnerable moments. And he was killed in his own home, wrapped in a carpet, hidden in a crawl space, by someone he let into his private world. So here is what I want you to sit with tonight. How well do we really know the people we let get close to us? How often do we ignore the signs because the connection feels real? And what does it say about our society that a man of Devon's caliber could be gone for nearly a day and a half before anyone truly came looking? DevonHoover deserved better. His family deserved better. And Reda Saleh deserved better. If this case moved you the way it moved me, leave a comment below and tell me what part of this story hit you the hardest. Like this video, subscribe to Midnight Crime, and click that bell icon so you are notified every time we bring you a new case. Because every single one of these stories involves a real person whose life mattered. And as long as we keep talking about them, they are never truly forgotten.